Thank you all. How are you? I feel kind of bad because it's so beautiful out. Like I want to take you all outside and sit in the sun before it starts raining for the rest of the week every day. I'm honored to be here. This is a really great group. How many people, just so I know who's here, how many are students? Hardly any. Excellent. How many are faculty or administration at the university? How many business people? And then I know we have a whole crew from the VA. You're counting business? Okay, excellent. I like that. How many are doing something other than what I just asked? A few. Okay. What do you do? Yeah. Okay, that's cool. Oh, yeah, look who's here. Excellent. And how many of you already know me? Like a lot of you. I'm sort of listening to Gretchen. I'm looking around the room. I'm like, I could just sit down, and then 20 of you could each get up for 7 minutes and tell stories, and then it would really be more meaningful probably than me talking. So we have about an hour and a little bit more. If I do a moderately decent job today, I will provoke more questions than I actually answer. So my email is ari@zingermans.com, and my cards are outside if you can't remember that. And as many of you in the room know, I will actually answer your emails. So feel free to email. Just try not to email me while I'm talking, because it kind of spooks me later when I look at the time and it was like while we were in the room together and you were... Because I give out my email all the time when I speak, and then one of the earlier times I did was at an Inc. magazine conference, and when I was done speaking, I looked at my email, and there's this email from this guy going, "I'm listening to you speak right now, and it's great," and I'm like, this is getting a little too stalker-like. I don't really like this. Anyways, y'all have these workbooks. There's no PowerPoint today. I hate PowerPoint. I like AriPoint. So you're getting the old-fashioned version, and I didn't bring pens for all of you. But I was hoping that because it's an academic institution, there would be a lot of pens, and I see I was right. What I want to talk about today is just my views on what I believe is an energy crisis in the American workplace and why I believe it exists and what I believe we can do about it. I want to start by giving you a little personal background. How about that? And please interrupt me with questions. Go get more food. I am used to people eating while I talk. It's kind of my whole life, so don't feel like you're being rude if you eat during the presentation. And honestly, I don't even care if you talk with your mouth full. I'm used to it. I see people do it all day long. Okay, so personal background. I grew up in Chicago. I came up here to go to school. I never went in the business school, though. I don't know if that's good or bad today, but I studied Russian history. Any other history majors here? A few. Okay, excellent. I forgot about that. That's right. So I studied Russian history. I had a particular interest in the anarchists, which I'm happy to talk about at length. Most of you probably don't know, but we actually have the largest anarchist collection in the country, about, I don't know, 2 blocks that way in the graduate library on the 7th floor of the grad library. We also have the largest culinary collection in the country. Neither of those are why I came here, but they happen to be good parts of having come here. So after I graduated with my history degree, of course, there's absolutely nothing you can do with a BA in history, which is fine. I knew that. It wasn't a shock. So I decided I mostly didn't want to move back home. And in order to not move back home, I knew I needed a job. While I was in school, I had driven a cab. That wasn't really very exciting. Picking people up at the bar at 2 in the morning and driving them home is not the most glamorous or intellectually invigorating activity one could embark on. And so I decided I'd do something else. And one of my roommates was waiting tables at Maud's, which many of you, I'm guessing, have been around town long enough to remember. Was over on 4th Avenue. So I went in there looking for a job waiting tables in my still standing belief that it's the best way to make a lot of money in the food business in a hurry is to wait tables in a busy restaurant. Unfortunately, they didn't need any servers, so I waited a few weeks and I went back and I said, well, maybe I could bus tables and then I could work my way up. And they said, that sounds great, we'll call you. And I waited about 2 more weeks and then I was really running out of money, so I went back and I said, look, I really have to work. Do you have anything? And they said, well, do you want to wash dishes? And I had never worked in food before, so I didn't know you weren't really supposed to want to wash dishes. So I just said, sure, I'll wash dishes. And they said, great, could you start tonight? How many people have worked in food? Let's just test this out. Excellent. Almost everybody. How many still work in food? None. Fabulous. Okay. Okay, well, there's our first learning for the day is Everybody works in the food business, but hardly anybody stays in it. I'm the exception, I guess. I feel incredibly fortunate because I totally stumbled into a line of work that I really love. We're going to talk about the natural laws of business. The 9th natural law of business, which we'll get to in a little bit, is that success means you get better problems. And I have a really great problem, which is there are not enough years left to do all of the teaching, tasting, traveling, and helping others do the same that I want to do. And I love that problem because I meet so many people who can't stand their work and mostly just want to get out of it. And I'm the other way, which is I would happily sign up for another 50 or 100 years right now. If you guys are in healthcare, if you could figure out a way for me to get that 100 years, I'll sign before I leave today, and I'll take it. So I started as a dishwasher. I feel really lucky also because I met great people. Paul Saginaw, who many of you know and certainly know of, who's been my partner in all this from the beginning, was the general manager at that restaurant. Maggie Bayless, who Gretchen mentioned, who's the partner at Zing Train, was a cocktail waitress. And Frank Carollo, who is one of the partners in our bakery, was a line cook. So I have no idea why the fates put us all in there together, but they did, and we are now 35 years later, and we still like each other. And not only that, we even like working together. So, well, it's no small thing. I feel really lucky. I mean, to have 4 of us have gone through 3.5 decades, really, together is a pretty cool thing. So I would love to tell you this fabulous entrepreneurial business school story about how from the time I was 5, I loved food and cooking, and my mother was a fabulous cook, and we traveled all over the world eating wonderful meals and going to the best restaurants. And like from the time I was 8, I knew I wanted to open my own restaurant. It was my life dream. But none of it's true at all. I grew up on Kraft macaroni and cheese, in the blue box, Mrs. Paul's fish sticks, Pop-Tarts, American singles, fruit cocktail out of the can, Tang. TV dinners. We kept kosher, so we didn't get a lot of, like I was sort of envious that we didn't get TV dinners. But we did get space sticks. Does anybody remember space sticks? I don't really know. You don't? They were like in this little it was like a Slim Jim with some sort of, I don't even know what, like modified food starch or something. But it was like, it's what the astronauts took up in these foil things, and I guess they could like push it through the hole in their helmet or something. I don't know, but it was the secret. Anyway, so I didn't grow up in that, nor did I grow up in business. I grew up in a family of teachers, doctors, lawyers, dentists, psychologists. So I was like the failure of the family for not getting an advanced degree. And here we are. Anyways, it kind of worked out. My story going back, I guess, so I started washing dishes. Paul had just started that day as the general manager. They had moved him up the street from one of their other restaurants. That's how we met. Frank started teaching me how to prep and line cook, and I started managing kitchens. So my background is, for those of you who worked in food, which was about 75% of you, my background was really all back of the house. Okay. Paul left about halfway through my 4 years, and he opened Monahan's with Mike Monahan. And he and I stayed friends, and we would talk off and on about doing something together. And fall of '81, I decided that my views on food and on people were kind of diverging from their organizational direction. And I gave 2 months' notice, and I didn't really know what I was going to do. And somehow, magically, Paul called me 2 days later and said that he had found this little building near the fish market that was coming open, and we should go look at it. And we did. And 4.5 months later, we opened, March 15th, 1982. So it's kind of weird, but we just had our 31st anniversary. So when we started, who was there when we started? A few of you. Okay. Yeah, her brother did our original logo. How is he?
Good.
Where is he?
He's in town. His son just graduated from here last week.
Wow, that's a little scary. Well, we're on the second. We have many people who are now working that are the kids of employees. It's a good problem. We're still in business, and I'm still alive, and they liked it enough that they sent their kids into work, so I appreciate it all. So we opened up 1982. Those of you who were not there, which is most of you, the original building was just that 2-story piece where the bread is now when you go in the front door. That was the wall to the outside. So it was just 1,300 square feet, which is minuscule compared to this room. Me and Paul and 2 employees. And that's it. Because we're in the business school, we borrowed $20,000 as a second mortgage on Paul's house. And my grandmother lent us $2,000, no interest, which we did pay back. And that's how we started. So if you look at page 3 in your workbook, you can see a little box score of what we do today. So our fiscal year is going to end in about, 10 weeks, end of July. So we will do about $46 million in sales, and we have about 580 or so employees, plus we hire about 300 more at the holidays. So if any of you want something different to do than what you normally do for 3 weeks, come on over. It's a change of pace. You can enjoy our problems instead of your problems. Clear your mind a little. Go back with perspective. So as many of you know, and I'll talk a little bit about vision, but our vision is just to open here in the Ann Arbor area. We have created this community of businesses, and you can see the logos either on page 2 or on page 3 of what we do. But our vision is only to do things in the Ann Arbor area, so Ypsi's fine or Saline or whatever, but even Detroit is too far afield because we like to know the people that we work with, and we like to know the customers, and we like to taste the food that we're serving. And no offense to going farther, but I don't want to spend all day in the car. Part of what I love in Ann Arbor is I can live where I live over by St. Joe's and get to the Roadhouse in 12 minutes. And if I just avoid the rush quarter hour at Washtenaw and US 23, it's really not that bad. So anyways, this is what we're about. Do you have any Zingerman's questions? You have the newsletters here if you want to read while I'm talking. It doesn't bother me. Are you guys okay in the back? Okay. Yeah, sure. Why did we call it Zingerman's? That's a great name. Great question. My last name is unpronounceable, although Gretchen did a pretty good job. Paul's last name is Saginaw, which was Sagin Or in Russia, which means seer of light in ancient Hebrew, which is very poetic, but got anglicized at Ellis Island. And no offense to anybody who's from there, but it's not. I mean, mostly you don't think about corned beef when you think about Saginaw. So we sat on the floor at his house and drank some beers and brainstormed names. And we wanted an A name or a Z name. So you'd be a beginning or the end of a list, which really doesn't matter anymore because on Google they all come up just as fast. But in those days, print was the major media, and so it's much easier to be at the beginning or the end, and Zingerman's is what we picked. Kind of worked out. So, other questions? You're easy. Nothing? So you all already know what we do, I guess. Okay. I'm happy to keep moving. Jane, you doing well? Okay. So, on page 4 is just a little bit of a sense of our organizational history. When we started the deli, I'm going to talk about vision in a minute, but when we started the deli, we didn't really have any language around vision. I don't think we really understood it. I think that we were, as I'll talk about, what Maggie in the training world would call unconsciously competent. Like any successful leader, we had a vision in our heads, even if we didn't call it that. And the key elements of it are what's listed in the top section under 1982. We knew that we wanted only one deli. We knew that we wanted a unique place that was not a replica of something from New York or Chicago or Detroit or LA. We knew we wanted really amazing service and food, but in a really down-to-earth setting where you could have what we still have, which is the president of U of M, Mary Sue, could be coming in and eating at one table, and we could have a family with little kids at the next table, and a truck driver who delivered to the back door coming around to eat, and somebody from Community High eating one slice of bread and 22 cents worth of butter at the next table. And that's still what's going on right now. It happens at the Roadhouse, it happens at the Bakehouse, it happens at the deli. And just for context, when we opened, the general wisdom was we would never make it. Those of you who are around will probably remember this, but Ann Arbor had probably a dozen delis fail in the previous decade. The neighborhood that we opened, where we still are, was considered a bad neighborhood. People told us not to go down there. There's no parking to this day, and up until cell phones 6 years ago, you couldn't find it. And it used to be one of the most commonly received calls was something along the lines of, I know I'm really close, and I've been driving around for like 45 minutes. And those of you who've been in town for a while, just to confuse the issue, the city used to turn the one-way streets in opposite directions like every 4 years because some traffic engineer, no offense, studied it and decided it was going the wrong way. So like once you had trained all these people from Lansing and wherever to figure out how to get there, then they would come the next time and the street would be going in reverse. but they would just go ahead anyway, and then, no offense to the police department, but they would hide in the parking lot and then just, it was like shooting fish in a barrel, and they would just knock out the tickets. So after all of that, it was amazing we made it. Generally, people were pretty critical of our idea that we were going to make this work. 5 or 6 years down the road, we were considered geniuses. It turned out it was a brilliant location, and Ann Arbor always needed a deli. This theme has repeated itself over and over again for us, which is that generally when we're doing something really great, everybody tells us it's a really bad idea. Paul and I sort of long ago arrived at the informal understanding that when everybody tells us it's a good idea, we figure there's something wrong that we're missing. And when everybody else aligns against us, then we know we're probably onto something really great. This is a little counterintuitive, but I think it's actually true. One of my favorite books of the last few years is called Ignore Everybody by Hugh MacLeod, M-A-C-L-E-O-D. Highly recommended. Paul's writing it down. I've read it like 8 times. It's an easy read. It reminds you that you got to do what you believe in, not what everybody else thinks you should believe in. 2 different things. Anyways, so I don't want to dwell on the other visions right now, but I want to move forward, I guess, into the next page and just talk about this whole thing about the energy crisis. So one of the good problems, yes, sir. With the mission statement? Yeah, absolutely. Well, can I hold the question? I'm going to come back to it when I talk about why mission is different than vision. But don't let me forget. Okay. So one of the good problems that we... Yes, sir. Be careful at auctions. Just fixing your hair. It looks good. One of the good problems that we have from what we've achieved over the years, and not that everything that we do can't be better, and as much as Gretchen said nice things, we know that everything that we do is flawed and needs to be improved all the time. But one of the good problems that we have is that we have a lot of people coming from around the country, around the world, literally to see what we do and study what we do, which is a fabulous problem. One of the manifestations of that is that I personally get a lot of phone calls and a lot of emails and a lot of requests to meet, and out of those come what has really sort of become my least favorite question. I'm telling you all what it is so that you don't worry you didn't ask me. What it is so you won't ask me, and that's some version of, could come from a reporter and they go like, hey, I'm writing this story and I only have 500 words and I need to tell people why Zingerman's is so successful. Or I'm going to be driving through town and like you just have like 10 minutes before we're going to open our own business. Like what's the one thing that's the most important? And I'm like, or my son's going to open a business and I just want to make sure that he knows like the key nugget of what he needs to do to be successful. What should I tell him? And I found myself getting more and more frustrated as people would ask me for what I perceived to be this very simplistic answer. And I started to kind of reflect back. Paul has taught me many great things over the years. One of them is a little saying that says, when furious, get curious. I like that. So as I was getting more and more frustrated or flustered, I started to remember what he had told me, and I said, well, they're not bad people, and they don't mean badly. What is it that's getting me so frustrated? You probably already figured it out. They're asking for an incredibly simplistic, straight answer to what I believe is actually a very complex and difficult problem. What makes a business successful? If there was one simple answer, everyone would already be using it. It's not that easy. So I started to reflect on what people were looking for and on what we were doing, and I started to realize that I came to the belief that like what we do is very much like a successful organic or sustainable farm. Like if you look at organic, old-style organic farming, gardening, you can't really say exactly what it is that makes the garden or the farm so successful. Like you can't say, oh, it's all the seed variety. Or it's just the soil, that's what makes it go. Or 17% of the yield comes from the farmer's skill, 14% comes from the compost work, 13% is the seed variety, 12.7% is the south-facing. Like you don't really know, right? What you know is that it all comes together in the environment, in the ecosystem in which the farmer is farming, and that what the farmer is basically adhering to the core laws of nature, and respecting nature, and in that context, the farmer is succeeding. But you really don't know exactly what this bug does or what this animal does or what the water does. What you know is that it works in that setting, right? And so I started to look at what we do like that, and then I started to look at what people were looking for in terms of this simple answer, and I realized that what they were looking for was much more like what is called monocropping. Do you know what monocropping is? 3 heads are nodding. Who knows what it's kind of a simple yes, no. You don't know what monocropping is? You do. I'll bet you know. Who's been to Iowa? Or Western Illinois? You know what I'm talking about now? Like row after row of corn. That's monocrop. Well, see, because the old farming was very diverse, and the plants and the animals are all living together. And it's all kind of mixed up, and by modern industrial farming standards, it looks very messy, unproductive, and inefficient. But the weird thing is, when it's done well, it actually works really, really well, right? So monocropping, I believe, is actually not efficient, despite modern views, and actually, although it looks very neat and clean, is actually not a healthy environment to work in. But it does provide the illusion that there's this one right answer which is going to produce this maximal yield. And basically what 20th century agriculture did, if you study it, is that they got rid of everything that seemed like it was extraneous in the interest of increasing yield. Right? Does this make sense? So whatever couldn't be proven beyond the shadow of a doubt was going to increase yield, gone. So, do you know what happens to the soil in monocropping? What happens? You're supposed to talk here. This is an interactive setting. It depletes, exactly. The only way that monocropping works is with very large inputs of artificial fertilizers. That's what keeps it going. Okay. So, with that in mind, about 4 years ago, I went to the Inc. magazine. Have you heard of Inc. magazine? So I went to the Inc. magazine conference to speak. I'm actually going to one again in 4 weeks in San Diego. Before I spoke, I was speaking on this essay that I had written in this first book called The Natural Laws of Business. The idea of the natural laws of business came to my mind from something Paul used to say for years. He would sort of say this thing and that thing were natural laws. And I started to reflect on that and my idea about organic gardening, and I started to realize that there were actually these natural laws that all healthy organizations followed. Didn't matter if they were for-profit, not-for-profit, didn't matter if they were big or small, East Coast, West Coast, food business, healthcare, legal services, it didn't make any difference. Universities, healthy organizations, all, I believe, were living those natural laws of business, right? So I was going to present on the natural laws of business, and the speaker before me was Gary Hirschberg from Stonyfield Yogurt. And although I hate PowerPoint, he loves PowerPoint, I think, because he was like showing slides, magnificent charts and arrows and colors and stuff going all over the place. And he presented on the environment and on basically what we have done as humankind to the environment and the work that Stonyfield was doing to help repair some of that damage by improving their systemic operational work and how they were actually reducing carbon footprints, et cetera, and improving profitability at the same time, which was very inspiring. Even if you didn't believe there was a problem in the environment, by the time he was done, you would have believed that there was one. I didn't really need to be convinced, but it was quite impressive. When I speak in settings like that, I like to listen to the previous speakers so that I can pull a thread out of what they said and bring it into what I'm going to say so that it makes the day a little more coherent for the audience. And so I was listening to Gary, and I was reflecting that what he was talking about was how we've operated in violation of nature and that we have commensurately created this crisis in the environment, right? An energy crisis, among other things. And as I was thinking about it, it dawned on me that what he was describing environmentally had actually been created in exactly the same way in the workplace. And that organizations everywhere have operated in the violation of the natural laws of business, and that they have created the same style of energy crisis. What did you say happens to the soil? It depletes. See, monocropping looks pretty by industrial standards, but it is not natural. Like FYI, corn does not grow in straight rows. Just saying. The kernels on the cob are not naturally all the same size nor the same color. They made them that way. It's not supposed to be that way because all of the work of the 20th century was to make everything conform. If you want to read interesting stuff about this, James C. Scott, who's I think at Yale, wrote a book called Seeing Like a State. I think that's the title, and it's not only was it in agriculture, which is what I knew, but it's also in forestry, street names, last names, et cetera, et cetera. Basically, the whole thing was to organize everything so it would be more easily counted. Yields would go up, tax rates would go up, et cetera, et cetera. Anyways, so I'm thinking about the energy crisis in the environment, and I'm thinking about the workplace and people operating in violation of nature, and this light bulb goes off. There's an energy crisis in the workplace. You all see it every day. It's everywhere. It's when you go into the business and they look at you like, no. No. No, we don't do that. No, you're going to have to come back tomorrow and talk to the manager. It's endemic. Who's had that experience? Does anybody like that experience? See, so the standard wisdom is there's something wrong with the employees. I'd say it's actually the other way around. There's nothing wrong with the employees. It's us. We're the problem. When we operate in violation of nature in agriculture, we deplete the soil. When we operate in violation of nature in the workplace, we deplete the natural creativity, innovation, sense of pride, desire to do great things in human beings. To give you a little data, one of my other favorite books of the last few years is by a guy named Dean Tucker. Wrote a book called Using the Power of Purpose. He's down in Houston. It's a very good book, highly recommended. He cited a Harris poll of the American workforce from about 4 years ago, but I doubt that that is any different. These are the numbers in the middle of page 5 in your workbook. Of the American workers surveyed, only 37% of them clearly knew the organization's goals. Only 20% were enthusiastic about those goals. Only 20% saw how their work could actively support achieving those goals. Only 15% felt like they were authorized or enabled to do work towards achieving the goals, and only 20% fully trusted the organization they worked for. How's that sound? Good? Not too good. It's an energy crisis. Because no offense to us and other healthy organizations like Menlo, but we're not paying 5 times what everybody else is paying. We're roughly paying the same thing, and not like we're perfect, because we're not. And I got a long list of all the stuff we need to do better. But to Gretchen's point, it's probably more likely that if you go to Menlo or go to us, people are generally going to be a lot more energized and engaged in what they're doing than if you go down the block to fill in the blank. I don't want to say anything bad about anybody. That's an energy crisis. So this is all going on while I'm working on this. It's all what's going on is the economy's crashing. And all everybody's arguing about is mortgage rates and tax rates. And I'm like, it doesn't matter. There is no frontline employee in America who ever got up in the morning and said, man, if tax rates were just blah, I would work so much harder. Because they don't care. Most of them don't even know what the tax rates are. But so I started to have this feeling. It was like you're in a room and it's 95 degrees outside and the windows are open and we're running the air conditioning and there's a couple academic arguments going on of whether we should run the fan on auto or on. And I'm going like, just close the window. You're asking the wrong question. Dean Tucker, in his deft wisdom, and I give him full credit, said just to make my point about how bad those numbers are and how inefficient the country is when we're running with those statistics, let me tell you what it translates into on a football team. Those are the second set of numbers. Of the 11 players that go out on the field, only 4 know what goal they're going towards. Even worse, only 2 care. When they break the huddle, only 2 of the 11 know what position they're supposed to line up in. Only 2 of the 11 feel like their efforts on the field make any difference as to whether the team wins or loses. And all but 2 are equally likely to root for the other team as for their own team. And I laughed pretty hysterically when he said it, but it's kind of sad. Because there's a lot of smart, creative, caring people out there that could be doing a lot better work for the same money so that everybody in the end could make more money and live more rewarding lives by collaborating and working in harmony with nature. Is this making any sense? Back of the room, you awake? Okay, you're allowed to get up and move around. Sir, question? Or are you just showing me it makes sense? So, when you live in conflict with the natural laws, I think what is created is what I would call, or actually what Wendell Berry calls bad work. Anybody know who Wendell Berry is? Highly recommended, probably close to 80 now. He's been writing for decades, poetry, fiction, nonfiction, rural Kentucky, born and lives, very insightful and spiritually engaging human being. He wrote a letter to the editor of the Progressive magazine about 3 or 4 years ago. Somebody, I don't even know who, and it's funny because I tell this story, and I guess I should look up who actually wrote the original article, but somebody wrote an article in the Progressive about why we need to go down to a 30-hour work week because people are working too much and they don't have time for their lives. And Wendell Berry wrote back a letter to the editor, which I loved. And he said, "It is true that the industrialization of virtually all forms of production and service has filled the world with jobs that are meaningless, demeaning, and boring, as well as inherently destructive. I don't think there is an argument for the existence of such work, and I wish for its elimination. But even its reduction calls for economic changes not yet defined, let alone advocated by the left or the right." By contrast, he said, "The old and honorable idea of vocation is simply that we each are called by God or by our gifts or by our preference to a kind of work for which we are particularly fitted. Implicit in this idea is the evidently startling possibility that we might work willingly, and that there is no necessary contradiction between work or happiness and satisfaction. Only in the absence of any viable idea of vocation or good work can one make the distinction implied in such phrases as less work, more life, or work-life balance, as if one commutes daily from life here to work there. But aren't we living even when we are most miserably and harmfully at work? And isn't that exactly why we object when we do object to bad work?" So see, I think the whole image of work in this country is a negative one. Like the only people who work a lot are the ones who have to, or the workaholics. And I'm not saying you should work a lot or a little. I'm just saying work could be this really amazing, fulfilling thing. Whether you work 10 hours or 40 hours, 30 hours or 80 hours, it's your call, right? And what we make of it is up to us. I think that the old model of image of work doesn't work. So if you think about that image of work, which is how many more days till Friday, how many more hours till I get out of work. By the way, if you go into your average work retail space and you ask the person on the counter how their day is going, it is about 25% odds that the answer is going to be some version of, "Great, I get off at 3. How many years till retirement? How many days till the weekend? How many weeks till the vacation? And I don't mean it's bad to go on vacation, have a weekend or a day off. It's fabulous. But it's kind of sad if the only thing you do at work is count the minutes and hours and weeks and years until you're done. Right? So I think if we do the opposite, which is we create, so if you move the continuum from bad work into the middle, you get good jobs, which are nothing wrong with a good job. A good job is where you're treated nicely, you kind of like what you do, you work with nice people, they pay you pretty well, the benefits are good, and it all flows pretty well. But I think you can go further. And I think when we go further, we create what Wendell Berry called good work. And I think that good work is something special. So here's what I wrote, because it's just what I think. Good work is life-altering, fulfilling, and fun. Good work is about learning, laughing, growing, all the while earning enough money to make your dreams come true. It's about collaborating with people you care about and who share your values, contributing something positive to the people and the community around you. It's fun, not something you flee from. It's a place you want to be, even if you rightfully have other places you want to go. Good work is about positive energy, both feeling it and building it. Good work is about doing something you believe in, work that you care about in a workplace that cares about you. It's endlessly sustainable, not energy sapping. While people might certainly on any given day go home tired after doing good work, they're rarely spiritually exhausted. When we're into what we're doing, giving it everything we've got, learning and laughing, even under duress, the experience is likely to be energizing, even if in a moment physically tiring. At its upper reaches, good work can be one of the most rewarding things one ever engages in. And I think that's true, whether it's bussing tables or being a CEO or the head of the business school, it doesn't make any difference. It's really about creating an organization in which people are fulfilled and going after their dreams in a way that's values and vision compatible with what we're doing. So I think when we live in harmony with nature, we can create good work. And I think when we create good work, everything gets better. And whether it's the busboy, and that's a nice story, and whereas Wayne could tell his story of Amos, who was also busing years before, it's not like we're perfect, but it's just creating a setting in which people are excited about what they're doing, and it's the opposite of that energy crisis. Am I making any sense? Questions? Sir?
Can an employee without an environment that's not creating great work, can they create their own great work?
Yeah, I think that you can. I mean, I think it's harder. I think this is why so many people, they go to work to get by, but their good work is what they do outside of work. And there's no right answer to what that is. For some people, it's their grandchildren. For some people, it's their hobby. For some people, it's the youth group that they run or the nonprofit activity that they do. And all of those are cool things. I think that the key is that it's in harmony with your values and your vision, and that when you're going after something you believe in, you put energy in, and that energy is exciting, is positive, is fun. And you feel like you're making a difference.
How do you do that for a busboy?
You know what? This is the reality. All work, if you choose to view it that way, is repetitive work. Where's my retired CEO? Like, your job was just glamorous, right, man? You just sit in a few meetings, hand some money out, sign a few checks, go play golf, right? What was your week like?
Each week was not like the next.
Right. It was hard, though, wasn't it? Yeah. So I think that when we treat the busboy like they're basically just this machine part that's not important and that basically is quickly replaceable, then they start to act like a machine part that's not important and is quickly replaceable. I think that when we treat them like what they are, which is a really intelligent, creative human being, that's essential to our success, because I don't care when you go into a play on a game, if you're only in the game for 2 minutes and you turn the ball over twice, you just ruined all the rest of the work for everybody else, and that we're only as good as all of us together. And I think that I believe that from the heart, and I believe that when people are in a setting where that's believed and practiced, imperfectly though we all do it, that's what you get. So, I don't know. I mean, that's my job, is to help them understand how they fit into what we do. Does that make sense? Not really?
Yeah, it makes sense, but it's hard to, how do you replicate that? How do you teach your managers to do in those cases when you're downtown in the Roadhouse or the Creamery? How do you get those people to know that and feel that? How do you
I'm going to get to that in 1 second. There was another hand. Yep.
Are you not telling the whole story?
No, I've only started. I've got another.
When I see you, 9 times out of 10, you're bussing the table at the Roadhouse.
That's true, too. That's true, too. Well, here's one answer from somebody who works on the counter at the bakehouse, because I ask people for their input when I do the books. So she's been there 1.5 years now, but at the time it was 6 months when this book came out last winter. So she said, I've worked for Zingerman's for a grand total of 6 months. And this is somebody on the counter. This is not like the manager in charge of everything. I've worked for Zingerman's for a grand total of 6 months. I've never felt as welcomed and supported by my coworkers. Everyone I pass says hi, has a smile on their face, and asks me how I'm doing. My bosses know my name. I'm going to cry when I read this, because I always do. Ari and Paul know my name. They're not a couple of faceless corporate suits I'll never meet, or that I have to quake in my boots upon hearing their names. From day one, it's been impressed on me how important I am to the continued success of this organization. Me, little insignificant me from nowhere, knowing nothing about anything. In the 18 years of my life that I've held jobs, nowhere else have I felt as much ownership, as much individual responsibility, where my input is welcomed, even encouraged, where I take care of my customers from start to finish and make sure that they are blown away, not by me, of course, but by this company. It's my responsibility to show people what Zingerman's does, what it's capable of, how incredibly special, responsible, and involved an organization it is. And I get to be a part of that every day. So, I mean, no offense to us, but she's not making $100,000 a year to do that. And she's doing the bakehouse equivalent of busting tables. And she's still there, and she's still into it, and she's still smart. And she's not 18, so she's had jobs in a lot of other places. So what that tells me is there's a lot of other places that didn't build on what she was able to do. Because I think that's the opposite of those numbers I read you from the energy crisis. So, are you all excited now or depressed? So see, that's the bad news, but here's the good news. The good news is fixing all that is free. It's free, really. I mean, it's easy, but it's not expensive. So like during the economic stuff, I was getting these calls every 3 hours, it seemed like, from some reporter, and they're like, I need low-cost tips for CEOs, what they can do to help their organization in difficult economic times. And I was like, other than our food, I can't really think of anything that we do that costs a lot of money. It's all cheap. It's free. It's free. The natural laws of business, like anything, are not easy really to do, but they're kind of simple. And on page 6 and 7 are the list of the natural laws of business. In our short time, I'm not going to go into all of them in depth. I want to focus on number 1 and number 12, and then I'll let you pick a few in between. Does that sound all right? Back of the room, you still okay? Okay. Janet, are you here? Are they getting their surprise later? Or? Now, I think, is an excellent time. Do you want? Well, wait. Do you want your surprise? Okay, I guess they want it. But you can only have one. Well, you can take more, but if you do, others will suffer. That's the anarchist approach. You can take as many as you want, but some other nice person in the room probably won't get any. Okay, so natural laws of business. My belief is that all healthy organizations live these. Whether it's your kid's lemonade stand, whether it's a healthcare center, whether it's a university, a delicatessen, a restaurant, a dental practice, a Boy Scout troop, a band, every healthy organization is living in harmony with these natural laws. They don't call them the natural laws of business. That's fine, but they're living them. Most people, in my opinion, would be what Maggie and Zingtrain would call, in the training world, unconsciously competent about the natural laws of business. You know what unconsciously competent means? 9 of you know. Do the others of you want to know? Okay, just checking. I don't know. I don't want to bore you. Unconsciously competent is where you're really good at something. You're so good at it that you do a really fabulous job, but you're not conscious enough of what you do and why you do it to be able to teach anyone else how to do it. The most common manifestation of unconscious competence is when you go into work or home or wherever and you're like, why don't they get it? It's so obvious. Who's had that feeling? Well, only a third of you. That's so great. When you have that feeling, come on, with your kid, you never had that feeling? When you have that feeling, in my opinion, you're unconsciously competent about something. What Zingtrain, one of the things that Zingtrain has pushed us to do is to become consciously competent about what we do. Because you can't just come in and say, here it is, what do you think? You've got to be able to present some recipe that people can use. So to answer to, I'm sorry, what's your name? Peter's question, in part, in hindsight, came to me about a year and a half ago. There was a woman who came for Zingtrain work from Utah. And she was here for a week, and I saw her on Monday, but I hadn't had time to talk to her. And as many of you know, in the morning I'm often at the deli sitting at that back table before we open. And it's my time to journal and get my mind together, so I don't really have to talk to anybody because we're not open. And I'm sitting quietly at the back table, and out of the corner of my eye I see this very rapid movement like this. And generally in the food business, very rapid movement before you open like that is not a good thing. And this woman comes up to me, and she's like, hi, how are you? And I'm like, well, I'm good, but not as awake as you are. And she's like, I just want to introduce myself, and, I got here yesterday, and I said, I'm so sorry I didn't have time to say hello. I apologize. We're really honored that you're here. She goes, no, it's fine. I love what you guys do, and I'm so excited to be here. And she goes, and I think I figured out the secret of what you do. I'm like, fabulous. What is it? She goes, well, I'm not 100% sure because I've only been here for a day, but I'm pretty sure I could just see that, like, you're hiring all these young entrepreneurs and you're just turning them loose. Exactly. And I'm like, well, not exactly. Mostly we're hiring liberal arts majors, high school dropouts, prison release people. Nice people got laid off from other industries and couldn't find a job in their real field. But her comment was enormously helpful because the next day I was reflecting on it and I realized the beauty of it. We fooled her. We fooled her. Why did we fool her? We fooled her because we're taking all these non-business people, and from the minute they start, we're training them how to think like business people. So we got English majors, high school dropouts, laid off teachers, thinking like business people. They don't even know they're thinking like business people. It's just what we do. This is the hilarious, in a bad way, thing I believe about large organizations, which is that we're the bosses. We're paid to think. You're all just going to work. We'll make the decisions. You just take care of the day-to-day. Who's heard that line of thinking? See, this is, in my opinion, this is akin. We get Walter. We go, Walter, man, you're going to be the wide receiver. We're going to play football. You're the wide receiver. Just catch the ball, son. Can you do that? You're in? Okay, fabulous. So I drop back. I throw Walter the ball. Now let's just test. Walter, and I don't actually know this, did your mother teach you to share? Okay, so now like all these guys are running over towards Walter, and he's like, oh, you guys here. You have it. Did she teach you like not to take other kids' toys? I figured. So like as soon as I throw him the ball, what's the most natural thing for him to do? Give it back. Are you kind of a social guy? So like if he sees these other people, instead of running away from them, he would totally be like, hey guys, let's hang out. Oh, you want the ball? Sure. See, my belief is most frontline employees make decisions which in the frame of reference and with the training and background that they have, those decisions are fabulous decisions. We at the top sit there and go, these are stupid decisions. What's wrong with these people? Why would they ever say that to a customer? Why? Because they're like Walter. They got told to play wide receiver and catch the ball, but no one taught them how to play football. And if you don't understand how to play the game of business, you're going to make decisions that from your perspective look great, but from the leader's perspective look stupid. Is this making any sense? One of my favorite anarchists is a guy named Colin Ward, English guy. I'm paraphrasing. He said, society makes its morons and then despises them for it. So part of how do we get the busboy in there? We treat the busboy like a smart human being that's helping run our business. And guess what? Over time, most of them start acting like smart human beings that are making decisions like they would when they run a business. One of the things that we do in the Zinc Train seminars is we bring 3 or 4 in front, or whatever, 5 people from around the organization to be a little panel and answer questions. And although you would think that we do 2 years of vetting to see who's going to go, it's actually more like who's willing to drive across town and show up and answer questions from business people for an hour. But the amazing thing of those panels is I am blown away and inspired every single time because they know the answers. In the same way, and I feel bad that I can't remember who it was, but when they get asked these questions, like they have the answer. Why? Because they're smart and they're thinking like business people from the time they start. And they know about vision and they know about mission and they know about a lot of stuff. Can they recite it exactly how I do? No, but who cares? Like if he's the wide receiver on a winning football team, it doesn't really matter if he knows exactly which coach developed the pass play that he's running. What he needs to know is how to run it well and why it's important for him to run it well. If he knows all the background, fabulous. So if you have employees that can make decisions in the framework of running a good business, aren't you going to get a better business? Okay. So let's look at the 12 natural laws. I want to start with the first one, which is vision, because in many ways, to me, it's the most important. Every successful organization of any sort, somebody had a vision. There would be no University of Michigan if somebody or a small group of, what year, 1817? Yeah, you should all know. They all pretend. Yeah, 1817. So somebody should Google it so we make sure we don't disseminate bad. Is it 1817? Yeah. So, I mean, somebody had a vision. When they started the VA hospitals, what year was that? They don't know. 1930. Somebody had a vision of doing something great for American service people, right? Whatever it was, somebody had a vision. They don't call it a vision. They don't do it exactly in the way that we do it in our organization, but they had a vision. The vision is basically the cathedral that you're constructing. Okay? It is my belief, and there's lots of data that the folks at Positive Organizational Studies and Positive Psychology will all show you happily, that will show you everybody wants to be part of something greater than themselves. The vision is a huge element of that. The sort of apocryphal story, which I did not make up, so many of you will have heard, is the guy who goes to Milan, not Milan, Milan, Italy, and he goes to the construction site of the cathedral, and he comes to the first guy he sees, and he says, "What are you doing?" And the guy says, "I'm laying stone." And he walks along, and he comes to the next guy, and he says, "What are you doing?" And the guy says, "I'm building a cathedral." Okay? The actual work, is there any difference? The actual work. It's identical. You put the mortar down, you put the stone down, more mortar, more stone, you go home, you come back, you do it again. Emotionally, what's the difference? Huge. So, in every job, if you choose to view it as repetitive drudgery, it is. So my job, honestly, like I'm sure when new employees get hired, they're like, "Man, I wish I had Ari's job. You just walk around, talk to people, and taste food all day." But mostly what I want to do is go clean the walk-in. And when I'm having a really stressful day and I'm at the roadhouse in the evening, I just go on the dish line and I scrape dishes for 10 or 15 minutes. You know why? It's relaxing. Nobody critiques my work. I've never gotten any advice. They're all happy I'm doing it. They all smile when they see me. And it's relaxing. Now, I've washed dishes. If you do it 8 hours a day, 40, 50 hours a week, it's not so relaxing. Okay, so the point is when you get in a different setting, of course it seems nicer, the grass is always greener. But the vision shows us how all of our work, whether it's me sitting in a meeting or bussing tables or making bread or whatever, is contributing to this amazing edifice that we're creating. Mission and vision are not the same as we do it. So just to be clear. So mission, we also do mission. I've written about it in here. As we learned it, missions are meant to answer 4 questions. They're of no help at Passover, those of you who might have been thinking that. The questions are, what do we do? Why are we doing it? For whom are we doing it? And who are we that's doing it? Okay. We wrote ours in the early 90s. Before we wrote our mission, I was actually quite skeptical about mission statements. My experience of them was mostly they were bad poetry that got hung by customer bathrooms, and I never saw the point. I think I read something that changed my mind. Ours is on the second page of the workbook. We wrote it in the early 90s. We hired Stash Kazmierski, who's now the other managing partner at Zing Train, who at that time was working for Dana Miller Tyson, and their office was right up the block, and they were willing to trade food and coffee for their services, which was good since we didn't have any money. And we ended up getting about 80 of the 100 people at the deli got involved in writing the mission and the guiding principles. The answer to the first question, what do we do, is in the first line of the mission. Either Paul or I are the only ones who teach our new staff orientation class. When I teach the 2-hour class, I still tell everybody if they take only one thing away from the class, and obviously for 2 hours I hope they take more, but if they take only one, it's to understand that we're truly only at work for one reason, and that's the first line of the mission. It's on page 2. So everybody who works in our organization is fully responsible for bringing a great experience to everybody they interact with, customer, coworker, vendor, street person. I don't really care. And I tell them flat out, it makes no difference to me whether you're 16 or 60, full-time, part-time, first day, last day, hungover, bad mood, good mood. I don't care. Punched in, punched out. We're all fully responsible for bringing everybody a great experience. And you know what? Busboys get it. Managers get it. It's not rocket science. Just find somebody and do something nice for them. It's pretty simple. So that's how we got our mission. Does that help? Okay. So mission, as we view it, is like the North Star, because no matter how bad your day is, you can always go towards it. Who here's had a bad day at work? I'm going to make you move. Only about a third of you. This POS stuff's working, man. Who's been tired at work? Who's been confused and overwhelmed? Okay, so for me, that's about a 20-minute cycle that I run through all day, every day. No, I'm serious, and I tell them all that, which, by the way, from a psychology standpoint, in hindsight, is actually hugely important, because they think there's something wrong with the job if you're tired, confused, or overwhelmed. But I'm like, what could you possibly do that's great that you're not tired, confused, and overwhelmed most of the time? It's normal. The problem is how we react to the tired, overwhelmed, and confused, which is energy that we expend not working on something great, but just worrying about how things are, which is like worrying that it's going to rain. It's probably going to. Worrying about it's not going to change anything, and the more I worry about it, the less prepared I'm going to be for when it actually does rain. Okay, so mission for us is like the North Star. It's timeless. Vision is different because it's at a particular point in time in the future when you reach the desired success that you dream of. That's your vision. You don't need to be an MBA to figure this out, but what happens if you don't have a clear vision of where you're going? You don't get there, right? So vision is up to you. There's no right vision and there's no wrong vision. There's just vision. So our vision, as I've already touched on, is only to open here in the Ann Arbor area. We only do each business once because we like unique things. Our vision is about 7 pages long. I can email it to you. It's in the back of the first book. And our vision talks about having fun. It talks about our work in the community. It talks about how it feels to work in the organization. Yes, Janet? Yeah. Yeah, we're still working on it. So what the vision says is that by 2020, we'll have 12 to 18 businesses here in the Ann Arbor area. It doesn't say what they'll be. And what they will be is pushed mostly from the prospective partner and what their dreams are, because I got a million ideas, but the hard question to answer is who's going to be in there for 20 years doing it every day and driving for greatness. So we do it in like everything almost. We do the opposite of what everybody else does. So we spend 2 or 3 years working with the prospective partners, crafting the vision, rewriting it, making sure we're in alignment and that we like working together, and then we decide to open. My experience is most people do it the other way. They decide to open and they go, okay, who's going to do it? And what are we going to do? Because they're not that clear. So the mission is timeless. The vision is at a particular point in time in the future where we can describe success with a lot of richness of detail. I was going to read you a few paragraphs of one so you know what I'm talking about. And by the way, the work around this visioning was done at U of M. It was. In the late 50s, 60s, and 70s, Ron Lippitt at ISR did all of the pioneering work. Stosh studied with Ron Lippitt. That's where he learned it, and we've morphed it into our version of it, but the core work was all done here. We have a whole 2-day seminar on it, which I teach, so I'm happy to spend 2 days with you going into more detail. But this vision is one that we wrote for the Westside Farmers Market, which is a little market that we started in the Roadhouse parking lot, I think 6 or 7 years ago now. Once again, FYI, when we started that market, who's been to that market? Okay, so when we started that market, no one liked that idea either. Like, our idea was the economy's crashing. We have the parking lot anyway. We're paying rent. Why not use it? Help the local farmers get some energy over into a parking lot of a mall, which is not a location generally known for positive energy. Why not? But let's see. The mall people didn't really like it. Even our own employees weren't in love with it because it was screwing up the parking, and customers were mad about that. I don't know if any of you are farmers, but trying to talk a farmer into being the first one to go into a market is like you might as well, I don't know, bring the Middle East to peace before you're going to get a lot of, well, we're not really sure and we're really busy. So they didn't really love it. 2 years in, the city called and said that, I hope there's nobody who works for the city. 2 years in, the city called and said, you're in violation of a code. We shouldn't have given you permission. We're going to close you down. This was in the middle of the worst of the economic. I'm like, you seriously, we donate the space. It's gone by 7:30 Thursday night, but you're going to shut us down. But they figured out a loophole so that it could keep going. Anyways, my point is, once again, no one really loved it. This vision, like all of ours, you were asking about the process, was collaboratively done. I participated. I was not the principal author. This was written in 05 for 010 because, as per what we learned from Stash, who learned it from Ron Lippett, you always write it in as an affirmation as if it's already happened. This was written in 05 for 010. It's the longest day of the year. The sun is at its pinnacle of warmth and light. Throngs of people are milling around the Roadhouse parking lot on this Thursday afternoon, amazed and excited at the abundance of locally produced goods and services, ranging from several gorgeous varieties of tomatoes to handmade soap and artisan crafts, plus a very strong synergy of Zingerman's items. Every vendor is selling the best of what there is to offer, growing or producing themselves what they sell. There's a tangible truth patrons have come to trust, that all these products have a story and none of them traveled very far to get here. Tents and awnings cover the stalls, creating a colorful and festive mood. There are 15 to 20 vendors at the market, so it's accessible and maintains variety, but remains magnetic and welcoming. The market continues to provide our customers with the best products available and serves as a catalyst for community development by offering an educational component and a local music scene. We have space reserved for weekly scheduled acts, including local musicians, demonstrations, and educational activities. Several people recognize the Roadhouse chefs selecting vegetables from the market's vendors for the weekend's menus. The market is a family event where parents bring their children after school and meet to shop for fresh produce. After shopping, families enjoy a snack from the roadshow at our picnic tables. Guests are thrilled with the produce, the chance to visit with neighbors, and best of all, connect with the farmers who actually grow their food. It goes a little longer, but I'm going to stop. How was that? What do you like about that? Yeah. So the visioning process, we use it for everything. So we have a vision for Zingerman's. We have a vision for each business. Every project starts with visioning. So back to Peter's question about the busboy. Everybody's learning visioning. So if you study at POS or in positive psychology, or if you go to what we do, which are all different applications or versions of the same thing, when you get everybody thinking about what they want in a positive way, as opposed to the whole rest of the world, which is thinking about who screwed up what and what's wrong, people get a lot more excited. Is this making any sense? Am I scaring anybody? You guys okay? You're thinking hard. Questions on vision?
As you're describing this, it sounds like people are coming up with a vision, working with other people, putting it out there. And I'm not hearing, it sounds more like what I think of as like the Apple model of like you come up with what's great, what you know people are going to want versus finding out.
Yes.
Doing a lot of market testing, so I was curious about that.
Yeah, I don't have much more to say than what you just said. Yes. I'm sorry?
You're not out there doing market testing and focus groups.
Well, let's see. I told you about the deli. How was your candy bar? So in 1999, if we had walked around Ann Arbor and who's had the cream cheese? Okay, so if we had walked around Ann Arbor in 1999 and said, are you interested in spending about $10 or $12 a pound for handmade cream cheese that you've never tried before in your life? Like 6 people would have said yes. No, I mean, as Paul always says, like, if we had walked around Ann Arbor and said, like, are you waiting to have a $12 sandwich? Whereas Jim Van Buckhoff, who runs Henry Ford Museum, says, like, it's the only place where you wait 15 minutes to order, which was probably low, but it was said a long time. You wait 15 minutes to order, you pay $15 for your sandwich, you wait another 15 minutes till you get it, and as soon as you're done, you go, great, when can I do it again? So I think by definition for us, we are doing what others, we're trying to do what others aren't. Not stuff we believe in, so it's not just a reactive thing. But if for us, I mean, I don't mean that we're insensitive to customers. Obviously, we do a lot of paying attention to customers, but nobody knows what they haven't had, and that's where I agree with Stephen Jobs on that, sure. Jane. Well, so we write a long-term vision. So the 2020. So in 1993 and 4, Paul and I wrote the 2009 vision. That was it till 2006 when we realized, whoa, it's almost here. What do we do? Oh, duh, write another one. So once we write it, you could change it, but we don't. Then each business also has a long-term vision. But also every project starts with a vision. We teach personal visioning so people are learning to use it within their own lives, to go after their own dreams within or without the organization. And then each year, so strategic planning is not visioning. So vision is where you want to end up. Strategic plan is how you get there. I'm not smart enough to figure out how everybody's doing strategic planning when they haven't figured out where they actually want to go with the plan. So each year when we do the strategic, so we only have a plan till 2014, but a vision for 2020. Right? So when they do the plan for each year, we'll start that little bit of the plan with a vision for that. Some people write them for their shift. It's just the whole thing of when you start with the end in mind and it's your desired outcome, your preferred future, as Ron Lippett used to say, it just increases the odds that you're going to get to where you want to go. And because you believe in it, the odds are significantly increased that you'll get there because you're driving after something you want, not after something somebody else assigned you to. And people do, I mean, quick story, and then I'll move on to the last natural law, and got time for a couple questions. But last fall, we had 2 seminars within 3 weeks, and the same thing happened in both seminars, just coincidentally. So the panel of employees comes, and the question was asked in a slightly different way, but it was basically the same question. And, we get slightly skeptical people come to our seminars, too. And so, this panel of employees is up there, and this guy raised, how do they get you to buy into their vision so well? And, to a person, the 5 of them, looked at this guy like he had just asked them, if they were crazy. And they looked at him like he was crazy. And they look at each other like, who's going to answer this guy? And one answers, and he goes, it's not their vision, it's our vision. I mean, it was almost like they were going to run him out of the room. Because it's true. It's not mine and Paul's vision, and we said, here, do this. It's like it was written collaboratively. 200 and something people participated. When you choose to join an organization, you're signing up to put that vision in place. You become a part of it, and we need to get across to people how important they are. Other questions? Yeah. Yes. Yes, it's in the book. We use it in the seminar. We teach it to everybody. There is a very specific, you could do it any way you want, but we have a particular process, which I learned from Stosh, who learned it from Ron Lippett, and it's all about just sitting down and writing it. Later you can do analysis, but I believe that, so natural law number 10 is that strengths lead to weaknesses. Who's pretty smart in this room? Come on, raise your hands. You don't have to be modest. Only 10% of you. Fabulous. That's incredible. This is how I do marketing studies, by the way. Okay. So strengths lead to weaknesses. So I used to think that there was this existential battle going on inside me all the time between my strengths and my weaknesses, and I was praying that the strengths would win. And then one day it dawned on me they were exactly the same. Everything I'm good at leads directly to everything I'm not good at. Everything we're good at as an organization leads directly to what we're not good at, right? So one of the things that we have is this fabulous, hand-done, traditional, full-flavored food, right? Well, there's a couple obvious weaknesses. It's hard to make. There's a lot of room for error because it's all done by hand, and then nature gets in the way by like not having the product, or there's droughts and whatever. And then it's expensive because I'm not smart enough to figure out how to grow heirloom tomatoes on our farm organically, pay the people who work on the farm, pay the health care for the people who work on the farm, pay health care for the people who work in the restaurants, sample everything like crazy, train like crazy, donate a lot to the community, and do it cheap. Right? So it's a natural weakness. So one of the natural strengths of people, everyone in this room, even though you're not admitting it, is you're smart. One of the natural weaknesses of smart people is we can overthink everything. In fact, we're trained to overthink everything. So the more we think, the worse it gets, because we keep thinking of more alternatives and what could be wrong with all the problems. And this is the whole thing of visioning, is to get out of that mindset into what we want. You could come back to that later. But about 30 of you are being skeptical about that, but it's actually, that would be proving the point. Sir?
What do you
It's true. It takes one to know one, by the way. I'm not blaming you.
What are you most worried about? There's something that just chronically.
Right now, I'm worried just about my dog. She's 13, and she's getting older, and she's doing well, and I worry because it's like totally out of my control, and that's all I'm really worried about. There's a million things will go wrong, but I mean, I'm writing the next book on managing ourselves. I come from a family of worriers. By the way, almost everything I'm telling you is learned behavior. I'm a total shy introvert, anarchist, who's in public all day leading a, $46 million organization. I grew up in a kosher home, and I wrote a book about bacon. But, and I come from a family of warriors, and I'm going to tell you, it's a waste of energy, right? So if I'm not working to make it better, then I need to just get off the case and stop worrying. I mean, everything will go wrong, and it's all out of control. Well, it is. It's all out of control. This is an illusion of American life, is that it's all supposed to be in control. One more, and then I gotta wrap you up.
What's been your biggest mistake, and how did you come to make that?
I've made so many, it's really not possible to tell you the most important one. I both on the upside and the downside, I'm so much more focused on the tiny little things. I know this sounds crazy, I don't care about winning awards. I mean, it's totally fine to win them, and it's great for the employees to feel good, and it's nice press, but honestly, I'm more excited about the 5-year-old that loves our cream cheese, and the 6-year-old who picked the Roadhouse to go for their birthday party when they got to pick anywhere, and the employee, and the woman who just emailed last night to Zing Train, who was talking about the amazing experience she had in the 3 days she was here. Like, those things for me are way more important, and we're failing every 5 minutes at some small thing. And I know that the glamour goes to the big things, but it's not. Those are built on 80 million little things. And like when they show you, like on an NBA game, they show you the film at the end where the guy made or didn't make that last shot over and over and over again. But they never show you the guy who missed the 3 free throws 2 minutes into the game. And I'm like, if that guy made the 3 free throws, the last shot would be irrelevant. Who cares? It's just as bad that they missed those, but for some reason it's more glamorous. So we make a million mistakes. It's really, as Paul says, it's not about not making mistakes. It's about recovering with a modicum of grace. So I want to close with natural law number 12, and then I will stay after and answer questions and sign books or whatever you want to do. But so great organizations, on page 7 at the bottom, great organizations are more appreciative, and people in them are having more fun. We have a couple of units here at the university who are now studying this, which I think is fabulous. And by the way, this is also learned behavior, because I come from a family where you would never, an A- was like slightly better than an F. And where my mother thought I was wasting my education, even 10 years after we opened, every year she would ask me when I was going to take the LSAT. And I'd like to tell you that's a joke, but it's not. Anyway, so learning to be appreciative and the power of appreciation is a learned behavior for me, but it works. Okay? Successful organizations are more appreciative than people in them are having more fun. It is a natural law. I used to think that it was a no-brainer. Of course they're having more fun. They're successful. Then one day it dawned on me, though, it's actually iterative, which means, yes, they're having more fun because they're successful, but they're also successful because they're having more fun. It's a cycle, right? So all I know is one of the strengths of high-achieving people is we're always pushing ourselves to do more. If you study Myers-Briggs, I'm an INTJ. It's how I'm theoretically wired. But I learned, so I'm from this family where, like, God forbid you would accept anything as being good because that might decrease the odds of you getting to even better. But I learned, as these guys do for a living, that it actually increases the odds of me getting to better by appreciating all the amazing things that are around me all the time in the moment. And so that's where we put a lot of our effort, whether you call it appreciative inquiry, positive psychology, positive organizational studies. They're all different angles, entries to the same thing, which is that there's a million small, tiny, positive things. The busboy, the flavor of the pulled pork at the Roadhouse, which has been really great, or how great the grits are, or the way one service person handled a difficult customer on a bad day. Those are like the things that really get me excited and inspired. And so I just send you out with the idea of doing that, and I'm going to read you one last quote, which is from the bacon book. Part of why my job is good is I get to write about bacon. And by the way, we do have Camp Bacon coming up. It's a fundraiser, June 1st. Raise money for Southern Foodways Alliance. So when I was working on the bacon book, I came across online this book by this guy named Maynard. Goes by one name, like Madonna. It was called Adventures of a Bacon Cure, and then the subheading said, Cult Book of the Year in Britain. And I'm doing a research, so you can imagine how bad I wanted the book, right? But I couldn't find it anywhere. No bookstore had it, so I finally broke down. I ordered it online. I had to wait 5 or 6 weeks. If you know, I'm waiting for this book to come. Now, if you know anything about us, you know that we really like design and nice things. Like these books, we've actually gone back to doing our own design. They're printed here in town. We're off the Amazon, off the grid. So I'm all excited to get this book. Finally, it shows up. I rip open the envelope, and it's ugly. Does anybody here do design? Couple? Okay, no one. Okay. Well, no designers. One designer. So I open it up, and the cover is a photo of him, but it's blue halftones. Okay, for the other 99 of you, that means it's all shades of blue and white, but he's a human being. It didn't look good, and it's on bad paper, and I was all depressed and whatever. But then when I read the book, it was like this amazing life lesson. So he started at 14 as an apprentice, bacon curer in Britain. He's now in his late 70s. He was the last of the formal apprentices. And everywhere that he would tell the story of going to learn about bacon, there was also like these life lessons woven into the book that completely blew me away. And I started to think of him like the Khalil Gibran of bacon. And seriously, like it was all this amazing stuff. And when I went back to reread the book, I had missed the first time through this little paragraph before it formally starts that says that he's so dyslexic that he can't read or write, and that his wife had taught herself to type only for the purpose of transcribing his life story. And this is a little lesson from Maynard, which was written about bacon, but I think is true for everything. He said, the secret of life is seizing as much happiness when you can. If you leave it too long and look for happiness later, it may be too late. So the secret is, when the happiness is there, take it. And we did. So I guess all I would say is there's a lot of nice people in your lives, and y'all have done a lot of great things, or you wouldn't be sitting in this room. And we're lucky to be in a great town and a great university with great community of great customers and great colleagues. So I just really appreciate you all. And a big piece of why we don't want to open anywhere else is because we like being here. So thank you all very much. And I'm going to stand out there and answer